More damning evidence of the massive bureaucratic failure by the Broward County Sheriff's Department surrounding that horrific Florida school shooting. Now, in addition to the dozens of missed warning signs and reports of 4 deputies not entering the school, Fox News tonight is reporting that there were delays even allowing EMTs to go inside the school. And sources are telling Fox that the Broward County Sheriff's Office denied requests by the EMTs to enter the crime scene. And also breaking this hour, our own Sarah Carter reporting that under Sheriff Scott Israel's leadership, well, there have been at least 40 investigations into department misconduct. Tonight, we are asking, when will Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel take responsibility? When will he release the cam footage so that you, the American people, can see how the deputies acted during this shooting? We have so much breaking news in our opening monologue. All right, major developments tonight in the massive FISA abuse scandal. We'll start there. Now we are getting one step closer to holding top-level Obama, FBI, DOJ, deep state officials accountable for what is a severe constitutional abuse. Now, they completely have shredded the Fourth Amendment rights of the American people, and people could and should end up behind bars. Now, the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, thankfully, is now saying tonight the Department of Justice will be investigating these FISA abuses. Let's watch.
We believe the Department of Justice must adhere to the highest standards in the FISA court. And yes, it will be investigated. And I think that's just the appropriate thing. The Inspector General will take that as one of the matters he'll deal with.
Finally, we have been unpeeling this story for over a year, while, of course, the liberal media, they've been lying to you, obsessing over so-called Trump-Russia collusion, which is nothing more to this point than a conspiracy theory that they have created out of thin air. There's no evidence. And by the way, as for the extensive, unprecedented Obama-era FISA abuses, we now have a mountain of incontrovertible and corroborated facts and evidence. Liberal Congressman Adam Schiff's his counter memo on FISA abuses has actually confirmed everything that we have been reporting on and everything that is also in the 2 Republican memos on this scandal. Now, that's why the mainstream media has completely been ignoring what is inside the Schiff memo. It doesn't fit their narrative, and more importantly, it doesn't damage President Trump, which, of course, is their ultimate goal. Here's everything that the Schiff memo corroborates from the Nunes and Grassley-Graham memos. This completely unverified, Clinton bought and paid for dossier that used Russian government sources made up, in fact, a large part of that FISA application to surveil Trump campaign associate Carter Page. Adam Schiff actually writes that a section of the FISA application references parts of the phony dossier about Carter Page meeting with Russians in Moscow in June of 2016. Page, by the way, is denying these lies and that they've never been proven true. I think Mueller would have arrested him by now, or at least charged him. Now, remember, the Grassley and Graham memo said that the Russian dossier made up the bulk of this FISA application. Now, Schiff didn't say that, but yeah, he admits the dossier was used. And the Schiff memo also corroborates that, in fact, the FBI and the DOJ lied and purposely and maliciously misled a FISA judge about Clinton and the DNC paying over $12 million full of the Russian dossier of unverified lies and propaganda. Can you believe this is happening in our country? Now, Schiff's memo actually quotes a part of the FISA application about the dossier having political motivations. But here's the thing. The application never bothered to mention that it was Hillary or the DNC that paid for that dossier. The FBI knew this, but they purposely hid it from the FISA judge, not rank-and-file FBI, that higher echelon that we talk about. They used it to get a warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. Here's another key point that the Schiff memo confirms, that the FISA application, yeah, they did mention a Yahoo News article by Michael Isikoff that he wrote about Carter Page. Schiff, however, lied about the fact that the judge was never made aware that the source for the Yahoo article was Christopher Steele. Now, the Republican memos, they actually detailed how this is a major problem because that means that the information was never verified by 2 independent sources, since Steele was the only source. So those are points that the Schiff memo actually confirms. And here are the key facts that the Schiff memo flat out lies about. The congressman claims that the Trump campaign was never spied on. That is a lie, 100% false, and here's why. When the federal government granted a FISA warrant, that gives them access to every one of Carter Page's old emails, old text messages, and they know every phone call he made, which could date back to when he was with the Trump campaign. Now, Schiff claims that former Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe, that he never testified, that without the dossier, they never would have been a FISA warrant application. But the Schiff memo never offers any proof, which likely means it doesn't exist, and my sources confirm that, in fact, McCabe said that. And Schiff does admit that Steele was fired by the FBI for these media leaks, but what Schiff doesn't say is that Steele lied to the FBI about his media contacts. And the Schiff memo tries to play up Christopher Steele's credibility by saying, well, he's worked with the FBI in the past. Yeah, they just fired him. Here's the problem. Schiff never mentions that Steele was using Russian government sources and that the information was never verified independently by the FBI or the DOJ or by anybody. So it should never have been used for any FISA warrant application at all. And finally, Schiff omits this critical piece of evidence. According to our reporting, the dossier put the FISA application over the top. In other words, we've been telling you that the first time they tried, it failed. The FISA application was denied. But then the dossier, well, they added that to get the help that was needed so they could, quote, get it approved. And then they lied to the judge. And what it all means is now we have 3 congressional memos that prove a key fact. The FBI lied to a FISA judge about Clinton and the DNC financing the dossier, which was filled with uncorroborated Russian lies, and they did it to spy on the Trump campaign. The Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, I'm glad he's moving. He needs to move quickly. Everybody involved needs to be held accountable. We need to restore the rule of law. All right, also breaking tonight, we have more news about Broward County and the Sheriff's Department missing countless warning signs about the Florida school shooter and then utterly failing to properly respond to this deadly rampage. Now, this is one huge, massive, giant bureaucratic failure after another in this case. And Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel, well, he's flat out refusing to take any responsibility. Instead, he's blaming pretty much everybody else. According to reports, this is almost unconscionable. 4 of Sheriff Israel's deputies did not enter the building while the school shooting was happening. One deputy, a school resource officer on the scene, his name is Scott Peterson, he was armed with a gun and a bulletproof vest. He took up a position outside the building while the shooting was taking place. One student described Peterson as standing still as he heard shot after shot being fired. Now, Peterson's defending his actions and ended up resigning. And what we're now learning is that the first member of law enforcement to enter the school, they were actually from the Coral Springs Police Department. Those officers rushed right in. Broward County deputies, they took up a defensive posture and position outside. And also new tonight, Fox News reporting the Broward County Sheriff's Department also prevented the EMTs from entering the school. And there are questions about, well, you know, would it be proper protocol? Students and teachers were shot and dying and bleeding. Now, sources are telling our own Laura Ingraham that Broward County Sheriff deputies, they were told not to go into the school unless their body cameras were turned on, even though those deputies apparently didn't even have them. And Sarah Carter, breaking news tonight, reporting that under Sheriff Scott Israel's leadership, well, apparently there have been at least 40 investigations into that department and misconduct. We did reach out to the sheriff's office for comment on Sarah's story. We haven't heard back. This is all one huge, massive, giant blunder after another while students and teachers were being slaughtered inside the school. And sadly, that's just part of the story. We know the FBI was alerted not once but twice about Nicholas Cruz and his sinister intentions, including weeks before the massacre. One unidentified woman told authorities that she feared Cruz would, quote, get into a school and just shoot the place up. The Naples Daily News reported that Broward County Sheriff's Office received 18 specific warning calls about Nicholas Cruz since 2008. And law enforcement, imagine this, visited this kid's home a whopping 39 times in a 7-year period. And we also know Cruz raised all kinds of red flags at school. He wasn't allowed to wear a backpack because of security concerns, and he was ultimately expelled because of his behavior. And, of course, he posted all these disturbing images on social media. Warning signs missed at every single level here. Now, people did the right thing. They saw something. They said something. They alerted authorities. These authorities dropped the ball on a level I can't even comprehend. They didn't do their jobs. They failed this community in Florida. And these officials need to be owning up to their mistakes so it never happens again. And we can fix the problems in the system, prevent future massacres. But that's not the case. You've heard people like Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel. He's refusing to own up to his failures. He won't answer key questions. He pats himself on the back and has a general overall lack of sympathy. Watch this.
When did you find out that Deputy Peterson had not gone into the building? How soon after the shooting did you know that?
Not for days. How
many days?
Investigators looked. I'm not sure.
You didn't look at the video? It was 1 week after the shooting. You hadn't looked at the video yet?
I looked at the video as soon as our investigators. It wasn't my job to look at the video. It was investigators' job to look at the video.
The families were at the CNN town hall, and you could have disclosed to them.
That's not. We didn't. I couldn't disclose it then because there was no corroboration, Jake. I could only take responsibility for what I knew about. I exercised my due diligence. I've given amazing leadership to this agency.
Amazing leadership. Will you resign?
It was a shame. No, of course, I won't resign.
Do you think that if the Broward Sheriff's Office had done things differently, this shooting might not have happened?
Listen, if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, O.J. Simpson would still be in the record books.
Obviously, the sheriff is in denial, out of touch with reality. It is why people are now calling on him to resign. Instead of doing everything that we just showed you, Sheriff Israel, he should be apologizing to the victims' families and correcting the issues that didn't stop this mass shooting and his deputies going into that building. Sheriff Israel doesn't appear to be interested in doing any of this. In fact, last week he said that he might not even release the footage showing Deputy Scott Peterson failing to enter the building. Listen to what he says.
We're not going to disclose the video at this time, and we may never disclose the video, depending on the prosecution and the criminal case. But what I saw was a deputy arrive at the west side of Building 12, take up a position, and he never went in.
Unbelievable. Whatever footage the sheriff has, it should be released to the public. The American people, all of you, and the people of Florida and these families deserve to see it if they want to see it. Now, Sheriff Israel needs to stop trying to save his job, focus on protecting this community that he's supposed to be serving. Joining us now with reaction to her article in Breaking News, Fox News contributor Sarah Carter, civil rights and criminal defense attorney David Schoen is with us. Sarah, I'm looking at your article here, and I am blown away. At least 66 cases of criminal misconduct being investigated into Sheriff Israel's department. What is going on down there?
Yeah, that's right. And 66, 40 of which were all under Sheriff Israel, which is so significant. And well, what's going on over there is that somebody needs to look at the leadership quality Sheriff Israel's bringing to Broward County here, to the Sheriff's Department. And there's a number of people concerned. I mean, these cases, this is just not a slight misconduct. These are criminal misconduct cases that range from kidnapping. I mean, I was stunned. From kidnapping to drug trafficking, these are sheriff's deputies, and even in some cases, killings. So there is something going on in Broward County Sheriff's Department office, and Sheriff Israel is the leader, and it appears that someone needs to be asking some very serious questions about what's going on there.
All right, David, I know law enforcement. My mother worked in a prison. My dad was a family court probation guy. When my Uncle Billy gave me a Christmas present, I'm about that tall, it was an NYPD hat. It was a badge, and I never felt more proud of my life. I had other family members in the FBI. I love, respect law enforcement. We saw it on 9/11. Everyone coming down, and they're going up. That's the people that I know. I've never heard of one, never mind four. Cops are trained. This is why they become officers, because they put themselves in harm's way. They're ready to do that. I've never in my entire life ever heard of an officer that has acted this way. And for all the other police officers, FBI guys, we are not talking about them. They do their job every day. How did this happen here? And it's all in one county under one sheriff. I don't understand.
Yeah, it's a failure on a number of levels, and we don't want to rush to judgment. As you have said and say night after night as a law enforcement guy, these police officers and deputies and firefighters are our heroes. And there are many fine ones who serve in the Broward Sheriff's Office. However, we have to consider a fundamental lack of leadership. You know, we have a lawsuit going right now. It's a federal civil rights case going against Sheriff Israel and other deputies there for the cold-blooded killing of a man, African-American man named Jermaine McBean in 2013. The Department of Justice has an open investigation in their Civil Rights Division about it. And we allege in that case, as the complaint shows, that ultimately the sheriff ratified the policy that happened. It's a matter of not acknowledging mistakes. You know, Ben Franklin said once, a man who is good at making mistakes is seldom good at anything else. Making excuses, rather, is seldom good at anything else.
Also, one said, the sting in any rebuke is the truth. This is stinging.
That's right.
And so there's a lot of truth here about failure.
And a lack of accountability. Look, it's a fundamental lack of leadership when deputies commit perjury, for example, in the no consequences. When an innocent man is killed, and the answer is we wouldn't have changed anything different, do anything different in the future. That's a fundamental lack of leadership.
How do you not... Look, I don't want to judge Scott Peterson. I don't get it, though. I really don't understand. I know the media is fixating that Donald Trump said he'd go in because they just hate the president, and this is how superfluous and ignorant the media is. But I know cops. They're friends of mine. I was just at a dinner with a cop. And this is not how they act.
That's right. They live for this kind of moment generally. Yeah. But tragedy, and they recognize the tragedy, but they're there to serve. And ultimately, the ultimate tragedy for this case, of course, is to the families. No one can give them an explanation that would be satisfactory, and pointing the finger doesn't help. However, there must be some accountability going forward so that something like this doesn't happen again. What we're seeing, unfortunately, from Sheriff Israel is the opposite of what we've all learned means leadership. That is passing the buck.
No, he thinks he did a great job.
He thinks he did a great job. He says,
and he doesn't take responsibility for what his officers do.
He has said he provides amazing leadership there. This is a fundamental lack of leadership to continue making excuses and point the finger.
Let me go back to Sarah on our other breaking news story, the comments of Jeff Sessions today. Now, we do know the Inspector General coming out with a report. I assume it's going to deal with FISA abuse. But him saying, it sounded to me, and maybe I'm wrong, that this goes even deeper than that.
Oh, it certainly does. I think at this point, with all the evidence on its face, we've seen the Schiff memo, we've seen Nunes memo, we've seen the criminal referral from Senator Grassley's office regarding Christopher Steele. There is so much insurmountable evidence within those memos that the Inspector General is required now to look at this. And remember, this is a single case. They're going to be looking at Carter Page, but they're going to expand on that case to make sure that the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court wasn't being abused over and over again.
But we know
they
it was
need to
abused.
look at that.
We already know it was abused, don't we?
We do. We do.
Because they didn't tell the judge. They didn't tell the judge that Hillary paid for it. They didn't tell her that it was unverified. They didn't tell the judge that the same source for Michael Isikoff, right?
That's right. But we have one case there, Sean. And what we need to look at, and I think the Inspector General is going to do this, is how many other cases out there that we don't know about, cases that aren't public. That is what they're going to be looking at. They're going to be talking to people at the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. They're going to possibly be talking to the judges. They're going to be looking at the documents that we aren't privy to because they're classified. I mean, look how difficult it was to get to the bottom of just Carter Page. So I think this is what the Attorney General wants to do. He wants to expand this investigation. He wants to take a hard look at this to ensure that this does not happen in the future.
Sarah, great investigative work on both issues. Thank you, David Schoen. We appreciate your involvement and contribution. All right, our top two stories, more reactions, Sebastian Gorka, Dan Bongino, and Geraldo next. Stay with us. All right, joining us are two top stories. Former Deputy Assistant to the President, Fox News National Security Strategist Sebastian Gorka, former Secret Service agent, NRA TV contributor Dan Bongino, and Fox News correspondent at large Geraldo. Geraldo, you're outmanned, and I'll start with you because of that reason.
Outgunned?
No. Well, but the thing is, officer, you agree with me. You agree, secure the perimeter, a full security assessment, every school, armed, retired, concealed carry, police, retired military. Here's the problem. When you go around the military and you've been out with them, they love you. police in New York love you. You have always fought for the people that defend our freedoms and protect our communities. I've never heard of a cop, ever, now being so prepared that they want, this is what that moment comes there, they want to save people's lives.
I think we have a tendency, though, Sean, with all due respect, and I love cops and I love GIs. We sometimes idealize them.
No, they're not perfect.
This cop, Scott Peterson, was, by all accounts, a donut cop, what I call a Dunkin' Donut cop.
Oh, that's
cool. A cop who goes and sits and has a belly and, doesn't do much. And now when push comes to shove, one thing I found out in all of my wartime assignments, 22 assignments in Iraq and Afghanistan, is that courage and cowardice is decided in the blink of an eye. You never know how you're going to respond. Like the president said, he would charge in even if he didn't have he doesn't really know. You only know when it's...
Well, he did have an incident that we know about.
All right. What I'm saying is, it happens, you either chicken out or you charge in and you're a hero. A Medal of Honor, where they didn't ponder that, and we all have our own self-image.
But they are trained, and mentally they prepare for those moments. That's what they train so hard for.
That's what the investigation will reveal. Did this chief of the department, the Broward sheriff, Israel, did he have a protocol that insisted to his officers, as most departments have since Columbine in 1999, there's a school active shooter in a school, you run to the action. You don't wait for backup. You don't wait for the SWAT team. You don't secure the perimeter. You go in and try to save the children. If you don't take out the shooter, then maybe you'll stop the bleeding of one of the critically injured children involved. If you didn't give them that protocol, then Israel has to go.
Bernie Kerik is a good friend of mine, and he ran a different department. And all right, Dan Bongino, you worked in the Secret Service. Yeah. You've been in the NYPD. Isn't this what every cop trains for? I've never heard of one, never mind four. And then you heard the comments of Israel. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I waited for a while to jump in this debate because I'm pretty confident Florida uses what they call the alert system for school security and responses to school shooting incidents. And Sean, that system, I believe it involves multiple deputies going in. But here's the distinction. So I wasn't sure if it was the deputy waiting for someone else. But once the report started to come out that multiple deputies responded and still didn't go in, I just want to be clear on this. There is no response to school violence I know of out there that requires them not to go in, set up a perimeter, and wait. Everybody post-Columbine is pretty much taught to respond maximum to the problem right away,
but
even if you have to bypass
away
victims.
The 39 times they're at this kid's house, or the Baker Act, which in Florida would allow them to institutionalize this kid. There's never been a case, see something, say something. We had every single sign, symptom, and evidence that this was the guy. Dr. Gorka.
No.
Look, I've said it before and I'll say it again, Sean. Political correctness can get people killed. If these reports are true, that they weren't allowed to enter the building because their body cameras didn't work. I've got a reminder for the sheriff of Broward County. Florida statute on sheriff's powers, Section 5, Chapter 30 says, the sheriff is responsible for the negligence of his deputies. It's not just Columbine. After the Pulse nightclub, after San Bernardino, all police departments around the globe are reassessing their protocols. You don't wait for the hostage negotiator. You don't secure the perimeter. Whether you've got a hard-plated vest in your car or not, whether you've got a long gun, doesn't matter. You enter the building to neutralize the threat. That's the new reality. If this sheriff said, don't go in there because we need your body cam switched on, he must be forced out of office or recalled.
I believe that to use the expression negligence, Dr. Gorka, gives too much credit. This wasn't negligence. This was a person making a choice. I hear gunshots going off inside, gunshots fired, gunshots fired, gunshots fired, and you sit there or you hide behind a concrete barricade. That's not negligence. There is I think the president had it right. That was a disgusting response to an emergent situation. This is a no-brainer. You go in, you go to the action, you die going over the berm. Go and try and save a child. Put a tourniquet on a kid. Get that arm. Do something. Do anything other than protecting yourself.
Dan Bongino.
Yeah, well, listen, Sean, this is more of a reason to allow teachers to arm themselves if they're willing to engage in the training.
But that's the point. They had the armed guard. That was Scott Peterson.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Wait. But if what I'm saying is if the teacher is there on the scene immediately, the cop had to respond from across the campus. It was a large campus. The teachers are right there. You know, sometimes when you need law enforcement in seconds, they're minutes away. I mean, unless this guy's an Olympic sprinter, I'm not absolving him. Listen, he clearly didn't respond the right way.
He didn't go in the building. He did not go in the building.
The shooter did go in the building.
They were in the building.
The teacher was already there. The shooter was in the building.
Israel didn't teach these cops to close on the action. He should be fired.
Dr.
Geraldo, the teachers are already there.
There's an issue with this question of arming teachers, especially if they're vets. You don't have to be, a tier 1 operator or a classified marksman. Where if there's one person in the building who's simply laying down fire in the direction of the perpetrator,
I think it's a terrible idea.
It's much harder to kill people.
I
in San Bernardino, if San Bernardino, one person had been armed, if one person had been armed in San Bernardino, we might not have had 14 people killed.
The whole point, Dr. Gorka, is you need guards on every floor. You need the perimeter secure. You need a full threat assessment, security assessment. If we do that for every school and we have the manpower and they're on the floor, they're in the building, that's where they should be.
Right. Totally agreed. Let's neutralize that threat.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all for being with us. Appreciate it. When we come back, you don't want to miss us. Jesse Waters, Jessica Tarlov, and much more news as Hannity continues. All right, he's only been out of office a little over a year. President Obama seems to have completely, utterly forgotten details of his blunder-filled time in the White House. During his off-the-record so-called speech at MIT on Friday, Obama actually congratulated himself and his own administration and their lack of scandals. Really? Really? Listen to this.
One of the things I'm proud of in my administration was the fact that, and I think these things are connected, we didn't have a scandal that embarrassed us. There were mistakes, we'd screw up, but there wasn't anything venal during 8 years, and that's, I know that seems like a low bar, but if you look at the presidency, that's
He's obviously in a state of denial. Let's just remind everybody of what it was really like, what truth and reality is. Start 2013 AP scandal, his Justice Department obtaining 2 months' worth of phone records from the AP, something the AP called a massive, unprecedented intrusion. Or 2014, the administration ridiculed over excessive wait times at VA hospitals that led to the death of dozens of veterans, and the months-long scandal surrounding, let's see, the prisoner swap, Bo Bergdahl. Oh, yeah, and there's that thing called Benghazi, that scandal, where 4 Americans actually died in Libya. But I guess at this point, what difference does it make, right, Hillary? And don't forget the Fast and Furious scandal. They actually put guns in the hands of violent Mexican gangs, and, of course, people died. And by the way, we've actually interviewed family members. Also, the time that the IRS, oh, yeah, they apologized recently in the Trump administration. They were targeting conservatives and Tea Party groups. And, of course, the disastrous Obamacare rollout. And then, of course, the money for Solyndra. That was a disaster. And, of course, we're still dealing with the ramifications of the ongoing Uranium One scandal. And, of course, we can go on. Here to help spark President Obama's memory is the co-host of The Five and the host of Waters World, Jesse Waters, and Fox News contributor. It's actually her world tonight.
Oh, my God. I won already?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I just have to do his.
No, you do it on the inside.
Oh, come on. No. This way, then this way. How
right.
many times do we have to go over this, Jessica?
You know how slow the ladies are.
Okay.
The liberals.
Let me just start with this one thing. Let's start with Uranium One. Here's a scenario. 2009, we have an FBI informant inside of Putin's network in America. He's reporting back. Robert Mueller is the director at the time. Hillary Clinton's Secretary of State. Obama's our president. And what are they doing? They're involved in bribery, extortion, kickbacks, and money laundering. 20% of America's uranium ends up in the hands of the bad actor Vladimir Putin and Russia through Rosatom.
There are a lot of people who dispute.
Excuse me, there's no dispute.
Of Uranium One.
Okay, There's no disputing CFIUS signed off on the deal. They ignored the informant that was in Putin's working with his operatives in America, and they allowed it to happen. 20% of our uranium is controlled by that group.
There are a number of people and fact-checking services that dispute.
Okay, give me one fact give me one instance where what I said is wrong.
Well, that Vladimir Putin has 20% of our uranium.
Control of through that Uranium One company, yeah.
Well,
Russian owned and operated through Rosatom and Uranium One and the merger.
And you said, oh, we transferred control of it to our European allies who are allies.
I never said that.
Yes. We talked about it on this show.
No, I said the uranium that they said would never leave the U.S. went to Canada, Europe, and Asia.
The Uranium One deal that everyone said Hillary Clinton signed off on, but we know that Hillary Clinton
Hillary's
didn't sign
State Department did. That's correct.
If Trump's State Department signed off on giving the Russians all that uranium, he'd be impeached. Listen, the biggest scandals from Obama we're finding out about now is the FISA abuse and the unmasking. A lot of the Obama scandals, people died. The VA, they're dying. Benghazi, they died. Fast and Furious, there were deaths. He pulled out of Iraq, let ISIS take over a third of that country. The death toll is still mounting. And we know it's a scandal because we have the cover-ups. Hillary smashing BlackBerries, bleaching her server, Lois Lerner's taking the fifth. If there's not a cover-up, what are we covering up?
We all know that taking the Fifth Amendment does not mean that you are guilty.
What about smashing a BlackBerry with a hammer? Or bleaching your hard drive?
I have never smashed a phone myself, but we've all admitted that the private server was a mistake Hillary Clinton has herself.
Mistake or a crime?
Well, I believe mistake. I know you believe crime, but difference of opinion
isn't it a felony to mishandle and destroy classified top secret special access program information?
I mean, that's certainly what I've heard on your show, but
if it wasn't a Clinton, that person would have been locked up. And how much are these Obama scandals going to cost us? Cylindra's $500 million. The failed website was $1 billion.
When do I get
to go? The cash to the Iranians, they're funneling it to Hezbollah. It's a lot of money. Where'd all the money go?
My turn. Okay, so I get all this, and I was expecting all of it, and I wanted one of those Karl Rove boards where I could write all of my Trump scandals. He's only been in for a year, but there's some stuff going on. So first of all, we don't know what's going to happen with the Bob Mueller investigation, so you could have a million things.
Is there any evidence to date of Trump-Russia collusion?
Of Trump personally, Russia collusion, or Trump campaign? I mean, there are a lot of people.
No, I'm not a lot of people. Do you know of any evidence you could tell our audience tonight?
I know about the indictments. I know about the 13 Russian trolls that have been indicted.
Any evidence of Trump campaign Russia collusion at all?
Well, we don't know. We haven't gotten all of the final rulings out of this.
That would be a no.
Well, but what do you can't. Obama was in office for 8 years. Donald Trump has been in office for 1 year, and this investigation.
Respond to Jesse's point. What about the FISA scandal? Well, you don't tell the FISA court Hillary bought and paid for the dossier.
But they did know that it was a politically motivated document, and I'm pretty sure they didn't think that it was from.
Jesse, they bury that in a footnote to disguise the fact that Hillary and the DNC cooked up this scheme.
No, that's not what happened there.
If you read, that's a fraud and it's a felony.
If you read both memos, and I would love a middle-of-the-road memo on all of this, because we know that the Dem memo is just a response to the Republican memo.
It's not a middle-of-the-road, other side of the road. There's the truth and there's the lie.
Okay.
We know they cooked up this phony memo to take down Trump, and they deceived the court, and that's why we have this investigation.
Is all because the Carter Page FISA warrant. We know this all started with George Papadopoulos,
who has
pled guilty, and we know was running around bragging about the fact that he had dirt on Clinton.
If Papadopoulos is guilty, then why hasn't he been charged by Mueller?
I assume that that's coming, or he's cooperating like Rick Gates.
You knew a lot of people in the Trump campaign.
Yeah.
I knew. I was there. You know I was actively involved, that I wanted Trump to win. I never heard of George Papadopoulos.
Because he was just the coffee boy?
Never heard of him.
Well,
I knew everybody in the campaign. Never heard of him.
I don't know how that could be, because it seems like he listened to his own fiance. He played a pretty big role there. Why does Bob
his own fiance? There's our credible witness.
And you know who opened up the Papadopoulos investigation?
Papadopoulos?
Peter Strzok.
Oh, right, the dirty texter who wanted John Kasich to win the election.
Wait a minute. He's the guy that said that Trump was lonesome and horrible.
So? A lot of people have said that. The majority of Americans have said
that. Does that sound like an objective investigator?
No, but that doesn't mean that there was some sort of violation of the Hatch Act or that he acted upon it.
He was so biased, he got fired by Mueller.
Well, I think that it's right that he was